All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. We're going to go ahead and get started for respect for everybody's time. My name is Michael Spaeth, and I am the current principal planner for the Town of Oro Valley and host of this neighborhood meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight. This process has been kicked off in response to a proposed annexation, general plan amendment, and rezoning on a site near you, the Westward Look Resort property located near the intersection of Ina Road and Westward Look Drive. Clearly, the mechanics of tonight's meeting are going to be a bit different than our regular in-person meetings. Our number one goal tonight is to have a fair, efficient, and productive meeting. Everyone's microphone, other than myself, will be muted throughout the meeting unless it is your turn to speak to ensure as smooth and efficient meeting as possible. Only I can turn on your microphone at the appropriate time if you'd like to ask a question or provide comments. At that time, I can also turn on your video if you'd like. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, I will provide a quick how-to later in my presentation on raising your computer or telephone activated hand when you have a question. Please hold your questions until we are done with the presentations and I open it up to questions. Tonight's meeting is scheduled to go until 7:30 p.m. We may go longer with the group's permission if necessary. We will try and get through as many questions as possible. Finally, I'd like to note that additional information has been posted on ovprojects.com and will continue to be updated as the town receives the anticipated formal applications from Westward Look. The video of this meeting and the PowerPoint will be posted there tomorrow. If anyone is having trouble using Zoom during the meeting, please contact Jessica Hine, our Constituent Services Coordinator, at 229-4711. Here is the agenda for tonight's meeting. First, I will provide information regarding annexation. Second, I will provide information on the public participation process and how to stay involved, including the anticipated timeline for the proposal. Third, I will provide key background information about the property, including the existing general plan and zoning designations, explain what we mean by general plan and zoning, and cover the general plan amendment and rezoning processing and review criteria. Then I will introduce Mr. Andrew Stegan and Ms. Linda Morales of the Planning Center representing the property owner, who will walk us through the what and why of the property owner site proposal. Lastly, I will provide information on next steps moving forward and provide information on how to stay informed and make your voice heard. So let's get started. First, I'd like to take a moment to orient everyone with respect to the subject property. The property is approximately 75 acres in size, located east of Oracle Road and Ina Road intersection, adjacent to the southern boundary of the Town of Oro Valley, as shown on the image on the left. It is bounded on the south by Ina Road, extending north on both sides of Westward Look Drive, as shown on the larger image on the right, outlined in yellow. The site is surrounded by unincorporated Pima County, shown in blue, including the Westward Look Guest Ranches, Westward Look Estates and Catalina Village on the west, and Westward Look Heights on the east. Now, with regard to the proposed annexation, I want to touch on a few key takeaways we want everyone to leave this meeting understanding. First, the area being considered for annexation is only that area owned by the resort, the approximately 75 acres, nothing else. Second, annexation is typically a property owner-driven process. However, in this case, the town actively invited the resort to pursue annexation. Third, because the annexation is a property owner-driven process, it requires property owner agreement. The property owner must be in agreement with the terms of the annexation. Lastly, annexation has mutual benefit for both the property owner and the town. For the property owner, that includes increased services, things like police services and enhanced marketing. And for the town, there is an economic benefit. Ultimately, though, the resort must find that the annexation benefits them as well. With that in mind, I'd like to provide some additional detail on the proposed annexation. First, what do we mean by annexation? Annexation occurs when a property located outside of a jurisdiction, in this case an unincorporated Pima County, seeks to become a part of an incorporated area, in this case the Town of Oro Valley. Again, the town has directly invited Westward Look Resort to join the Oro Valley community. The town has an annexation strategy recently adopted by Town Council, which provides direction regarding future annexations. The strategy identifies a number of potential annexation areas neighboring the town, categorized from highest priority to lowest. The Westward Look Resort property is a priority 1 property, the highest priority. Why is the town interested in annexing the resort? The resort represents an opportunity for the town to build upon key goals expressed by Oro Valley residents in the Your Voice, Our Future general plan. As you can see on the screen, there are several economic goals and policies from the general plan that directly support the proposed annexation. As such, the town has proactively approached the resort to discuss potential annexation. Later in this video, you will hear from Mr. Andrew Stegan, the general manager of the resort, and Ms. Morales from the Planning Center to discuss the applicant's perspective on the proposed annexation. The first question for many of you is my property being annexed? Again, no, it is not. The annexation is focused solely on the property owned by the Westward Look Resort, as shown in yellow on the screen. So who approves a proposed annexation? Because there is only one property owner, Westward Look Resort, if they agree with the proposed annexation, the request will proceed to a public hearing before Town of Oro Valley Town Council for consideration. The proposed annexation will be accompanied by 2 development-related applications, a general plan amendment and rezoning, which will track concurrently with the annexation. Westward Look Resort wishes to achieve 2 objectives: ready the area that fronts Ina Road for future development, and assign proper zoning to the existing resort development and open space areas. For all general plan amendment and rezoning applications, the town requires applicants to engage in community outreach at the front end of the process before applications are even submitted, as it is important to hear your comments and questions early and often. Does your participation matter? Absolutely. Community input has shaped every general plan amendment and rezoning application in Oro Valley. Typically, an in-person neighborhood meeting is held prior to formal submittal of a general plan amendment and rezoning application. However, the zoning code enables the planning and zoning administrator to approve alternative methods of public outreach when warranted. With the ongoing COVID-19 social distancing requirements, alternative methods are necessary and are the best solution under the existing circumstances. This modified format allows us to provide information while still addressing your comments and concerns. An informational video was uploaded several weeks ago on August 31st to ovprojects.com regarding the applicant's proposal. Hopefully you all have had a chance to view that. If you haven't, we strongly encourage you to do so. Tonight we are holding the first neighborhood meeting. As of today, we do not have a formal application from the property owner, but we do anticipate one from the applicant next month. Following a couple rounds of review for code conformance, a second neighborhood meeting will be held on October 22nd. Over 550 property owners near the site have been directly notified by mail, and the site has been posted with yellow signs in multiple locations. If you weren't notified about this meeting and wish to be in the future, please send us a request with your name and address to ask@orovalleyaz.gov, and we will add you to the list. There will be additional opportunities for public input as well as the process moves forward. Both applications require consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing. After receiving public testimony, they may vote to provide a formal recommendation to Town Council, who will then consider the proposal. After receiving community testimony, Town Council may vote to approve, deny, or continue the application. The annexation-related applications and the general plan amendment and rezoning applications will be considered by Town Council at one public hearing. Notices will be sent out in advance of both public hearings. Before I provide some detail on the background of the property, I'd like to briefly discuss what is a general plan. The Your Voice, Our Future General Plan is a voter-approved long-range policy document which drives town decisions and embodies the community's values. It includes the vision, guiding principles, goals, and policies, as well as the land use map, which shows the proposed general uses of all land in the Oro Valley planning area, including this property. The plan, including the land use map, was ratified by voters in 2016. Property owners have the right to request a land use change to their private property, known as a general plan amendment. The general plan intentionally acknowledged that amendments would be made throughout the life of the plan and specifically states that the amendment process be used because of its robust public engagement process, as shown in italics on the screen. With that in mind, the plan includes amendment criteria for evaluating amendment proposals, which include general conformance with the vision, guiding principles, goals, and policies of the general plan, a thorough review of how neighbor concerns have been addressed by the applicant as part of their proposal, and for non-residential amendments, an evaluation of whether or not it contributes to the long-term stability of the town. Again, the general plan land use map applies a land use designation to all property within the town's planning boundary. For the subject property, the existing land use designations are resort golf course, shown in green polka dot, neighborhood commercial office in pink, and low density residential in yellow. Now that we've talked about the general plan and the land use designations, how does zoning relate? The general plan is a high-level policy document that drives town decisions. The zoning of the property is what actually gives the property owner the legal right to use their land. It establishes which uses are permitted, for example, homes, and which development standards are applicable, things like building height limitations and setback requirements, among others. The existing zoning for the property is Pima County CR1, as shown on the screen. This zoning district is intended for detached single-family residential development with minimum lot sizes of 36,000 square feet. The resort is an allowed use as it is considered a legal non-conforming use based on when it was established. Now that we have some background on the existing general plan land use and zoning designations for the property, I want to take a brief moment to explain the applicant's proposal in broad strokes before they provide more detail. Again, Westward Look wishes to achieve two objectives: ready the area that fronts Ina Road for future development, and assign proper zoning to the existing resort development and open space areas. To accomplish this, they need to process the aforementioned general plan amendment and rezoning applications. Again, these applications will run concurrently with the associated annexation application. The only area the applicant is seeking a general plan amendment land use designation change for is the low-density residential area on the northwest corner of the Ina Road and Westward Look Drive intersection. The request is to change from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial office to accommodate the proposed uses, similar to the property located on the northeast corner of the intersection. The applicant is proposing a rezoning to planned area development, which is a set of zoning requirements that would be specific to this property. A planned area development, or PAD, allows a mix of uses, is customizable, and can be tailored to be site specific. As you can see on the image on the right, the intention is to preserve the existing open space next to the Westward Look Guest Ranches as open space, preserve the existing resort area, and provide for future development of the vacant parcels fronting on Ina Road. As part of the PAD, the request includes 3 separate concepts for the vacant parcels fronting on Ina Road. I will just quickly walk through these as the applicant's representative will go into more detail during her presentation. As you can see on the screen, The three concepts include a mix of uses ranging from retail or restaurant to multifamily or hotel. Again, the applicant will provide more detail on each of the concepts. Both the general plan amendment and rezoning applications will be reviewed for conformance with the general plan and zoning code. As part of that review, staff is aware of some likely key items, including ensuring a high-quality development, traffic in the area, and impacts to open space, among other things. With that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Andrew Stegan, the general manager of the resort, and Ms. Linda Morales with the Planning Center to provide more detail regarding their proposals and to explain the what and why of their applications. Mr. Stegan, I will unmute you and turn your video on if you'd like.
Okay, good evening. I think, hoping everybody can hear me. Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, thanks. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Andrew Stegan. I'm the general manager of the hotel, and obviously the representative of the owner. Our owner, just to go back, I'm not going to repeat everything that was in the video, but our owner is Dr. Kiran Patel, who is a gentleman based in Tampa Bay, Florida, and was in healthcare. And then since approximately 6-7 years ago, he got into hotels. So he owns several hotels around the country. This is his only, actually it's not true. He owns a Cheyenne Mountain Resort in Colorado, but besides that, this hotel is the only hotel in the West that he owns. And so Dr. Kiran Patel bought this property in 2012. And through the years, we've been trying to bring it back to what we believe is it's been underfunded and really is lost a lot of its glamour and status that perhaps it had in the 90s and a little bit later. And as you can imagine, that's a little bit of an arduous project that doesn't happen in 1 or 2 years. And our first really goal was to make it financially stable, which we did a few years ago. And now, so moving forward, we want to improve it. And 2 areas of improvement. One is we're actually underway. Some of the neighbors you might have seen are renovations. Where probably, I would say, 75% through a $11 million renovation, which includes everything from our meeting space to painting the outside of the buildings, to our tennis courts, to a lot of areas around the pool, open spaces, and such things as $150,000 worth of new patio furniture. And right now we're doing our guest rooms, and we're probably we're about 40% complete with our guest rooms. And so that aspect you won't see until they're completely done, but we're starting to open those up and hoping to finish that by November. So, and then the last major project of that would be to re-asphalt the whole property, including the road to Ina Road. And so we really want to bring it back to where it was, and we're looking forward to that, and we've already started marketing that. Obviously the virus has put some roadblocks into that, but eventually we'll all get back to normal. And so as Michael mentioned, this project's been in the works for about 3 to 4 years, and really it is to look at development south of the hotel and what we can do to really enhance the hotel and the resort experience. And all of you folks travel, and I'm sure if you think back to some of your destinations, whether it's in California or Florida or wherever, resorts have sometimes they have some areas in front of them or before them or beside them that provide extra amenities for their guests, whether it be restaurants or some retail or but also providing some services for the surrounding neighborhoods, whether it's retail, restaurants as well. And that's really our intention. I've answered or received a lot of communication from you folks, and I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to everybody yet. There's a few folks that I do mean to get back to in the next few days, but I've tried to answer everybody's phone calls and letters or emails. And just before I pass it on to Linda, I want to just make a few points here. And one is that the intention is not to devalue our property. I don't know why we'd want to do that. Our intention is to increase the value of our property. And that's why we're renovating the property for $11 million, is to increase the value of the property, to hopefully bring more guests who pay more money, who give a return to our owner. And any development south of us, that would be the same goal. So a lot of folks have mentioned we're going to devalue the neighborhood. I really, that's not our intention. And the only way that would happen is if we devalue our resort, and our intention is not to do that. So as we go through here, we want to keep, each resort looks at different points of differentiation between ourselves and others. And our competitive set is, as you well know, the Westin, the Hilton, the Hacienda del Sol, the Lowe's, the Omni, and to a lesser extent, JW Marriott, just because it's farther out, and also the Ritz-Carlton. So we always look to differentiate ourselves between us and them. And we've decided that we have two major advantages that they don't. The big one is history. Obviously, we're here since 1912. Nobody can touch that, with the exception of Hacienda del Sol. All the other resorts were built in 1980s and later. And so anything that we do will accentuate the history that we have, the advantage that we have over our competitive set. The number 2 point is the wellness. We believe the area that we have in terms of, we have the spa, we have the walking trails, we have the natural surroundings that other folks don't have. I'm not comparing ourselves to, for example, Canyon Ranch, because we're not a wellness center. But in terms of a resort that offers facilities to leisure and corporate guests, we have a lot of wellness, the stables, the tennis, the basketball, everything that Chef's Garden, a lot that other folks don't have, or CompStat has. So everything that we do going forward, including any new development, needs to fall in one of those 2 categories. And so having said that, architecturally wise, anything we do has to fit in with what we already have on the property. And so moving forward, those are our plans to do that. One last point is that a few of you have asked why we must be asking Oro Valley, because Pima County has refused to. And that's not true. We can go on record and saying we've never asked, at least since 2012. We've never asked Pima County for any rezoning. They've been well aware of this, that our talks with Oro Valley, and as Mike mentioned, Oro Valley approached us, and we we're listening to it, and over 3 years, it's progressed into something that we find very interesting. So, and I'll take any questions after our presentation, but for this point, at this point, I'll pass it on to Linda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stegan. Linda, please, Ms. Morales.
Great. Hello, everyone. I know you've all had a chance to, or hopefully you've all had a chance to review the video, but I thought I'd give a quick introduction of myself if you have not, or a little reminder of that, and then just to go through the proposal in a little more detail, but again, overview. And again, if you haven't had a chance to look at the video, there's going to be more information on that. But tonight is really about listening and hearing your questions, your concerns, your comments. So I don't want to take up too much of that time in light of that. So again, I'm Linda Morales, and my company is the Planning Center. We are planners and landscape architects here in Tucson. And we were approached by Westward Look toward the end of last year, and started working with them on a master plan that would go along with the annexation. And so that's where we are today. We're getting ready to, like Mr. Space said, getting ready to submit an application for the zoning that would go along with this request. And so that's kind of my area of expertise is zoning. So I'm going to walk you through that master plan that we're talking about for that. Again, the resort property is about 75 acres. The on the screen, you see the different color overlays, and the yellow is representing the existing resort where the guest rooms and the resort facilities are today. That is largely not proposed for any new development. Minor things, as you know, and as Andrew said, they've gone through a remodel. Might be minor changes, but really what we're doing is getting the zoning in conformance with what's there now. The resort predated zoning, so it's just got the CR1 residential zoning on it now. So this planned area development rezoning that we're discussing would bring that into conformance with Oro Valley zoning. So that's the intent for that yellow area. The green area across Westward Look Drive to the west of the existing resort is to remain as open space. We are aware that there is a deed restriction on that portion of the property, and that was put in place back, I believe, in the 80s, that restricts that to a residential or not residential, sorry, recreational uses. And the resort would love to continue and intends to continue doing their passive recreation there, trail rides, things like that, but no new development is proposed in that area. And the real focus of our PAD is the areas that you see to the pink, the ones that are along Ina Road that are on either side of Westward Look Drive. And again, as Andrew said, any development that we do, we really, it's Westward Look's desire to have anything they do that really enhances and supports the resort. So anything that would go on there would be of the highest quality standards. Like you said, there's nothing that they would want to do that would devalue the resort, devalue the area. We want it to be high quality development that fits in with the surroundings and fits in with that location next to their resort. So we call those two areas the Gateway East and the West, and we have, again, we are in an early planning stage. There are no immediate plans to develop these at this time. We have no developers at this time. This is simply positioning the site for future use and future development as we move forward down the line, but again, not immediate. If we could switch to the next slide, I'll go over the concepts really quickly. We have 3 different concepts that we are currently proposing with a variety of uses, and this is intended to be a little bit of a ability to mix and match these. So as I go through there, to represent not necessarily exactly what would be built, but something that would show the different types of uses and the different types of layouts that could be conceivable and that we could put into the PAD document, which is the zoning again on the site. So as you know, on that, on the east side of Westward Look Drive, the Resort Gateway East, that is currently where the stables are. We have, all these plans have some sort of recreation and or the stables getting moved to the north side of that wash, so that to the north and closer to the resort. And so that is what you see here. You see right now, I don't believe I can point at it, but basically where you see the label of apartment complex and pool is kind of more, thank you for whoever's pointing for me. That's generally a little north of there is where the stables are right now. So those would go again to the north, and that would become the resort and the event center kind of thing for outdoor events associated with the resort. This concept does show an apartment complex on this site that would be a luxury style. We kind of modeled it after the villas at San Dorado, if you're familiar with that, or some of the HSL and Cantata product, the higher end, highly amenitized, a really resort type of a community. And so that is what we are showing in this particular concept. The drive would come off, it's shown right now as a gated entry. So it would come in off of Westward Look Drive and be gated coming into that. And then having what would likely be an exit only out onto Ina Road toward the southeast corner of the parcel. On the west side, we have on this particular concept, a sort of a boutique retail restaurant plaza-oriented type of a commercial development. And this is one that we are really using Broadway Village at Broadway and Country Club in Tucson as inspiration for that. Something that would have a mix of those restaurants. It would be a walkable destination type of thing that people in the neighborhood, as well as people living or staying at the Westward Look and people living in the surrounding areas could walk to and enjoy as an amenity to the neighborhood. And again, we are showing one exit onto Ina and one to the Westward Look as you come in off of Westward Look Drive. Go ahead and move to concept B. All right, so this is our second alternative. And again, you see the resort, different configuration, moving the resort facilities up north of the wash toward the north end of the site. Again, I don't really realize I realize there's no legend on here. North is up, and just to make sure everybody is oriented here. On the east side, we're showing kind of a mix of uses in this particular concept. Toward the northeast corner, we have some office casita type of development that could be tucked up in there, where it's kind of off the road a little bit and not necessarily needing that visibility from Ina Road. Right on Ina Road, you see where it's labeled hospitality. That is intended to be a sort of a traveler's accommodation type of hotel rather than a resort hotel. And it might seem kind of strange at first that a resort hotel would be proposing a hospitality use, but in the event and in the instances where they have events and large conferences or sporting activities, they've got the tennis tournaments and things like that happen at the resort. It would be really a nice ability to have some more hotel rooms and some more different lodging option for people. And so that's why Andrew asked us to show an option that would include a smaller hotel along the Ina frontage. And then as you see right at the corner, just to the west of that, we have some restaurant and some mixed use, again, retail center that would be focused more on a plaza type of an arrangement. And this is this whole thing, we're really envisioning this to be modeled a little bit more like St. Philip's Plaza, which is a river in Campbell at the southeast corner. That one is kind of the identical mix. It's got some office, it's got some restaurants, quite a few restaurants in there. It's got the hospitality use. So that was our inspiration for this particular layout. And then on the west side of Westward Look Drive, and again, the access would come in, the main access would be, again, come in off of Westward Look. All of these come in and access before it gets to those first houses to the north. So the traffic would really be focused at that intersection and not driving on up. The only traffic that would continue on north would be for the homes that access off that, as well as to the actual resort itself. On the west side, we have some office uses, and based around a courtyard, and have pushed kind of the parking back behind there and pushed those up to the front. Let's go to the third concept. And so this is just a different iteration of, again, we've got the little park area up where we're at the north end, closest to the resort. That could be an amenity again for the resort. To the south of the wash and along Ina Road, we have a couple different options here that could be actually the same layout. That could be either an apartment, a luxury apartment in different configuration. Again, focused around a resort type of pool amenity, or this could also be a convention hotel that again would increase the ability of Westward Look to hold larger events and larger conventions when we can finally get back to some of those activities. And we do show on this particular one a couple different alternatives for access. This one does bring the traffic a little bit further up, but it also splits it between two different driveways going onto Westward Look. And then we have an exit onto Ina Road as well. On the west side, this is more of a residential kind of a layout, more of a single family or townhome type of a thing, and a smaller lot, but again, a purely residential, people living there. We have a kind of a common area amenity toward the middle, but we wanted to throw that in as an alternative as well. So again, those are the three different concept plans that we have thrown out for people to comment on and to react to. And with that, Andrew and Michael and I are all here to listen to people and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morales and Mr. Stegan. Now, folks, we've reached the most important part of the meeting where we get to hear from you. Before we get started with your questions, I'd like to explain how you can all participate during this meeting. During the question and comment period, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your computer or telephone generated hand. There are two ways to do this. For those participating via phone, press *9 to raise your hand. For those participating on any platform that uses the Zoom app or the Zoom website, some screenshots are shown on the screen for you to follow along with. Find the participants icon at the top or bottom of your screen, depending on your device. Click on participants, and this will open a dialog box where you will see an option to raise your hand as shown on the right-hand side of this slide. Alternatively, if you are using an iPad or tablet, you may need to click the three dots that say More as shown on this screen in order to get the option to raise your hand. Raised hands will be moved to the top of the list in the order in which they are raised. I will then announce your name and turn your mute off so you can speak, and also turn on your video if you'd like. Please make sure you are not also muted on your personal device and that your video is not turned off on your personal device by using the microphone and video icon shown on this slide. When I announce who is up to speak, I will also announce the next person whose turn it will be to speak, so that person will be prepared. Once you have asked your question or made a comment, I will remute you to allow the speaker to provide an answer. Again, if you are having any technical issues with Zoom or have further questions about my Zoom participation instructions, our Constituent Services Coordinator, Jessica Hind, is at the ready to help. You can call Jessica anytime during the meeting at 229-4711 to request further assistance with Zoom. We are going to do our best to get through as many questions and comments as possible. It looks like we have a number of participants tonight, and we will do our very best to get to each of you. Please keep your comments or questions to no longer than 3 minutes out of fairness to all participants who wish to be heard. I will respectfully remind folks of this guideline as needed. My aim is to keep things moving along in a fair and efficient manner. Again, the goal of this meeting is to have a productive conversation about the project and provide constructive feedbacks and questions. Please keep that in mind as we move through the meeting. And just to be clear, if folks didn't hear my directions on how to participate via phone, please use *9. All right. So again, with that, we'll go ahead and get started with your questions and comments. Please bear with me as it does take a second for me to unmute folks and move between our speakers. It looks like our first speaker is Steve O.V., and on deck after them is Arthur, Sarah, and Max. So Steve, I'm gonna unmute you. Please make sure you're unmuted. Would you like your video turned on, sir?
No, thank you, not right now.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, first of all, can you hear me clearly?
We can, yes.
Okay. So, as it's likely that the Westward Look property owners have not participated in recent Oro Valley zoning meetings, I wanted to briefly point out that many in the community have taken issues with the procedures that Oro Valley have implemented for these meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the rezoning meeting on Zoom for the proposed nearby C1 commercial development on the corner of Oracle and Suffolk Drive in the neighborhood directly neighboring Westward Look to the north, Suffolk Hills for instance, Oro Valley chose to selectively mute anybody who wasn't talking, cut off all video for anybody other than the party representing the developer without proper explanation, and worst of all, completely turned off the messaging feature of Zoom halfway through the meeting, directly after two parties expressed concern with how the meeting was taking place. This made it so that those representing the developer could talk and be seen freely, while nearby residents and citizens of the city were effectively and literally silenced. The meeting was also prematurely ended before everybody was able to voice all the concerns and questions they had, with Oro Valley knowing full well that there were more questions and statements to be put forth. There's evidence for this meeting currently on YouTube in a video titled Neighborhood Meeting for Proposed Rezoning and Conditional Permit on Oracle Road and Suffolk Drive. I would suggest that anybody who is not present for this meeting that is here tonight, especially those representing Westward Look, watch that video and decide for themselves if Oro Valley is legally and effectively representing their constituents. Treating citizens and residents as children in a classroom, this was an overreach of government and abhorrent to the values of the city and democracy as a whole. I hope that tonight none of these government oversteps occur, but I want to bring up concern with Oro Valley's interpretation of their own guidelines that permit meetings such as this to take place. In the informational video posted by Oro Valley on August 31st, current planning principal planner for Oro Valley, Mike Spaeth, stated, start quote, "The zoning code enables the planning and zoning administrator to approve alternative methods of public outreach when warranted. With the ongoing COVID-19 social distancing requirements, alternative methods are necessary and the best solution under the existing circumstances," end quote. Firstly, I would like to ask those representing Oro Valley to read aloud in this meeting the portion of the zoning code that supposedly enables online meetings. As you will hear, it's vague and open to interpretation. My interpretation of the zoning code is that the conclusion Oro Valley has reached that the zoning passage means that you can forego a required physically accessible meeting for an online meeting is incorrect. My original background is in tech, and I've had constant internet connection issues in this area with sometimes multi-hour dropouts. In fact, there's a chance my internet might not work tonight. And if that happens, my voice would be completely silenced. If I, a younger citizen with a tech background, has issues being able to participate in this online meeting, how would you expect a senior citizen, some of who are hard of sight and hearing, which would make properly understanding a Zoom meeting challenging, and who make up a large portion of those in this area, to be able to properly participate in this meeting? Furthermore, I'd like to ask Oro Valley if the zoning code that Mr. Spaeth has cited was written before internet was either invented or widespread. If it was, it means that the code was intended for alternative methods that would not include online Zoom meetings. Due to these circumstances, I believe that Zoom or online meetings replacing physical public meetings is not a reasonable interpretation or solution, and as such should be voted on by the citizens of Oro Valley as to whether or not it should be allowed. Furthermore, the only reason why an online meeting would be necessary would be to enable social distancing brought on by COVID-19 concerns. Today on September 25th, gyms, movie theaters, large restaurants, big box stores, pools, and many more gathering places are permitted to operate within Oro Valley city limits. Given that, would you not also deduce that an in-person meeting for something with a significantly higher long-term impact than those uses would be warranted if proper social distancing guidelines were followed? Oro Valley could, for instance, use a large auditorium within city limits and keep people distanced and apart while still allowing those who wish to participate via Zoom or online do so simultaneously.
Steve, we're past our 3 minutes. Are you, out of respect for other folks, can we wrap it up?
Sure. You had 38 minutes to talk, so if you wouldn't mind letting me have another minute, I'll be done. So Westward Look, for instance, could use their large outdoor spaces, such as their expansive snow and rooftop, to hold the meeting outside. Where in the Oro Valley pandemic response does it state that this would not be possible? Another solution would be to delay meetings taking place altogether until they can happen safely in person. Given all I've touched on, could it be questioned if Oro Valley is purposely holding an onslaught of rezoning meetings during a pandemic to be able to take advantage of the lack of proper participation? Oro Valley has themselves stated that their current mission is to aggressively pursue rezoning projects to increase the tax base of the city. A quick look at OV projects currently will show that there's 22 code text amendments or general plan amendments projects similar to this Westward Look project in the works, many of which are large-scale retail or housing developments, such as trying to squeeze multiple apartment complexes into the Oro Valley marketplace development, which was originally intended to be a retail and dining destination. Oro Valley is a city that has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. One of their largest employers, Honeywell, just 2 weeks ago announced they would be moving their R&D division out of their Oro Valley plant, which could cost Oro Valley up to 700 of its highest paying jobs. Is Oro Valley attempting to make up for lost jobs, retailers, and residents by attempting to build out as much of the city as possible to increase tax revenue? Is it a coincidence that such a large number of these rezoning projects have launched during a pandemic, when citizens have larger concerns to focus on, such as if they'll be able to afford their own housing or have a means of income, an inability to attend them in person, and a difficulty being able to engage with multiple projects at once? I look forward to hearing Oro Valley's response to my concerns, and furthermore ask that all of the concerns are investigated by an independent commission prior to moving forward with current or additional zoning amendments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I will say that we try to be as accommodating and fair and efficient with everybody as we can. Obviously, these are challenging times, but we're trying to provide as efficient and a fair process as we can. I do see that Mr. Stegen would like to provide a comment as well.
Thanks, Michael. You know, I'll be brief. Steve, you know, personally, again, I represent my owner. It's an insult to me that, and us, that you would even think that we'd line this up during a pandemic, and your conspiracy theories. This, as I mentioned, and we have lots of backup to say that we started these conversations 3-4 years ago. And if anything, Oro Valley wanted to do this 2 years ago, and it was our owners who honestly had other stuff or had other priorities. So, you know, we're trying to be fair to you, and you know, it's unfortunate you feel that way, but our dealings, and I can speak for my owner who's dealt with the Oro Valley directly with Oro Valley, have always been above board, and I suspect they'll continue to be like that. So you suggesting that we're virtually lambs to the contrary is not very productive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next up is Arthur, Sarah, and Max. And I apologize if I butcher your name. Bryce Menor is on deck, so to speak. So Arthur, Sarah, Max, would you like your video turned on?
Yeah, that'd be fine, but excuse me if I have to adjust it a little bit.
That's okay. Yeah, go right ahead, and you should be allowed now. If there you go.
Oh wow, I'm really in shadow. Sorry, I guess this is about the best I can do at the moment.
Okay.
My name's Max, my wife is in the other room with our son, so excuse us if we hear that. We're kind of right across Ina on Alpia Street. I first want to say this is actually a little familiar, as I lived on Mountain Shadows as a child when Don Diamond was planning on building a large amount of houses in the area up there. The concern from the neighbors is simply putting in, is very much, as you said, decreasing the property value around us. Initially, Don Diamond's proposal was to put in high density or much higher density than the existing neighborhoods. And thankfully, what was agreed on somewhat amicably was to do similar 1 acre individual family homes. That's certainly something I'd like to see in this proposal, but obviously I'm not going to try and tell you everything that you can do on your property. One thing I'd also bring up is I know that the development that was done at Cawson Catalina State Park was promised as a high-end luxury shopping center, and there ended up being a Walmart put in. As much as I understand and appreciate and respect your thought that you want to make sure that you don't decrease the property value of the neighborhoods, I'd also like to see that put in writing in some ways. Would it be possible to put something to say that you won't put in a Walmart or a super center of any kind into writing before this goes into practice? Also, some sort of limitation on the density of housing would be really nice to hear for the people who live across the street on single acre or multi-acre properties who really enjoy having that amount of space between their neighbors. The prospect of having restaurants across the street sounds really nice. That sounds really exciting. But I am also concerned about the amount of traffic that might come onto these roads. With Ina Road not being in Oro Valley, would it be the property owners in unincorporated Pima County who would pay for the upgrades? It's one of the Oracle and Ina is one of the busiest intersections in Tucson, and we just got it to a pretty nice manageable state. Would it be Oro Valley that would upgrade the road in the future if this brings in a lot of really nice traffic, or would it be Pima County? Thank you very much for hearing from me.
Thank you for your question, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Morales to answer the first couple there.
There, I'm unmuted. Certainly, I respect your concern about some kind of a big box use coming in, and I think that that's something that we could put in writing, and I haven't talked to Andrew, but just knowing him and the quality that he wants to maintain here, and that the owner wants to maintain on the site, I don't believe that would be a problem to put in restrictions. We can't restrict a particular business in a zoning document, but we could restrict it from a certain size of, like, big box, if you will. I don't think that it would be an appropriate use here either. And so we could definitely put that into the PAD where we restrict certain uses that are objectionable. So, and that's something that as we continue to talk about it and have a dialogue, we can do that and figure out what that list of uses is. As far as the traffic goes, one of the required elements that we have to do with the PAD document is to prepare a traffic impact analysis. And so we're currently working with a company called Kimley Horn, and they have a very good traffic engineering team that is looking at all these different options and calculating out what the traffic would be generated, and then talking about different measures that would have to be taken to address whatever the projected traffic is. And obviously that would be as it's phased in, and you know, what may needs, if there's something that needs to happen now, if there's something, you know, when phase 1 goes in, phase 2, or, you know, whatever as it goes in. So that happens right now during this process, but it also will happen later on when we have the exact uses that are going in with the development plan process. So there's kind of a double phase of that where you have to do it. But things that'll tell us things like, do we have to have a decel lane, you know, as people are coming and slowing down to drive into the site? How long does that decel lane have to be? How much storage does have to be there? How, you know, are there turn lanes or whatever measures that we have to do? And I see that Paul Kiesler just turned his camera on, Oro Valley, and that it's not just our traffic engineers doing that. We turn that information into Oro Valley, and then they're going to assess it, their technical engineers, and give back recommendations of that. And that will all be conditions of our approval, that we have to do those things.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Morales. And yes, Mr. Paul Kiesler, the Oro Valley Town Engineer, raised his hand as well. So, Mr. Kiesler, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Spaeth and Ms. Morales, because you hit most of the points. One of the only other thing that I'll add to this is, if this annexation, rezoning, general plan amendment were to move forward, a requirement by the state for the town of Oro Valley is that we have to, as part of the annexation, pull in any adjacent public street. So that section of Ino Road that is directly in front of the area of Westward Look would actually become part of Oro Valley. So we would be maintaining and operating the signal right there. Now, of course, it's one signal in the whole line, a whole chain of signals. So we'll be working very closely with both ADOT, who runs Oracle, and Pima County, that runs the rest of the signals on Ino Road, so that we have a uniform and as best as we can timed phasing of all the signals. So that's all I really want to add, is that the town will be taking over that section of road. So the person's concern with regard to the county paying for it, it would actually come to Oro Valley.
And Mr. Kiesler, could I ask, just in case anybody isn't familiar with ADOT, can you explain who that is?
Sure, that's the Arizona Department of Transportation. So Oracle Road is a state highway, and that's under the state's jurisdiction.
Great, thank you. All right, next up is Bryce Menor, and on deck we have Paul Tatum. So Bryce, you should be unmuted. Would you like your video turned on, sir?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Should be ready to go now.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Hi, Mr. Stegan, Ms. Morales. Thank you, Mr. Spaeth. I'm Bryce Menor. I live on Vista West Day. And we love the resort. We love this neighborhood. My wife and I have bought our home here. We've been here about 2 years, and we really love it. And there are a few things we really like about the neighborhood. And Obviously one of them is that it's kind of quiet. I'm sure that's not good for the resort. I'm sure the resort would probably like more of a lively scenario. But, I was wondering what the planning committee and the developers will do to kind of deal with light pollution or reduce light pollution. So that's my first question. Second one is obviously noise pollution. What can be done to kind of reduce noise pollution? A third question has to do with building height. Obviously no one wants condos staring into their backyard while you're, taking a swim. So I'm wondering what can be done to limit the building height. And again, I know that none of this is really up to the neighbors, but these are things, that we think about. And then last one's wildlife. We just have some really neat wildlife running through, I think, the unnamed wash. We get lots of coyotes, javelina, rattlesnakes, hawks, Gila monsters, you name it. We love that stuff. So obviously building is going to kind of take away from some of that habitat, but I'm also wondering what can be done to kind of protect some of the wildlife. So those are the big ones, light pollution, noise pollution, wildlife, and building height. Those are concerns and things that I can kind of see in the plan, but what can be done to kind of limit those?
Okay, great. Thank you, Bryce. I'm going to ask Ms. Morales to answer those.
Yes, those are all really good questions. I'll try to take them in order if I remember. The lighting is, there's a couple of things that protect us from having issues with lighting. One is the outdoor lighting code. That's pretty much countywide. Each of the jurisdictions have them, but they require that we don't have we make sure we don't have light trespass and we don't have lights shining in the sky to protect our dark skies and obviously to protect our astronomy community. But what we can also do just to even ramp that up a little bit more is put that into our PAD document that requires that all the lighting has to be downward directed, that it can't spill over to adjacent properties. I had that in my neighborhood. We had a development that was going in and they actually had to go back after the fact and adjust the lights, and they were great about that. And we absolutely would be willing to do that to make sure that we're not spilling light over and creating that, and absolutely keeping it in the whole dark skies kind of mode. Noise. It was funny because we had talked about, that St. Phyllis Plaza was one of our inspirations. And that's from a design standpoint, but there are some issues with that development. They have some bars in there that are open. They have outdoor music, and it's caused some issues in the neighborhood. So let's say that we'd like to have the inspiration from the good aspects, but not necessarily the noise. The resort doesn't want that either. We don't want to have, nobody wants a lot of noise coming from this late at night. So again, we could talk about restrictions on that and restrictions on any amplified music or decibels, things like that. That is, again, the beauty of doing this rather than doing just a straight rezoning to a commercial district. The PAD lets us put those things into that, and those are really great suggestions to talk about how we can, limit the impacts on the neighborhood. You talked about building heights, and yes, some of the uses that we've proposed are multi-story that we would like to do. What our original intent is to ask for up to a 50-foot building height on the frontage on the Ina Road pieces, which would allow, again, multi-story. But with those, we are proposing some setbacks and setbacks that are proportional to that height. So the higher up you go, the further the setback has to be, so that you have protections on privacy, so people aren't staring, into your backyard. And again, landscape borders and those kind of things are also part of the proposal to protect that privacy, because I understand and I get that you don't want people looking into your backyard. And yes, even a single story is going to have an impact on some views. We'll try to make sure that we're providing view corridors through there. And on the corridor topic, The wash, you're right. There's obviously, we understand that there's some wildlife that comes through there. All the concepts show that wash staying as open space. And so there will still be a corridor that runs through there. We will continue to maintain that as natural open space. One of the studies that we are doing is our significant resource inventory. And that is where we have to go out and our landscape architects go out and inventory the trees and inventory the significant vegetation and the riparian area. And then we're also mapping the riparian area, working with Oro Valley staff to do that. So we'll identify those areas. The unknown wash, if anybody has a name, let me know. We didn't know what the name was, but that wash is part of that, as well as the Casas Adobes wash, the larger wash up to the north. So those things are absolutely things that we're considering in our land use proposal. Great questions, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Next up, we have Paul Tatum, and on deck we have Ann Fisher-Siegel. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Sorry if I did. Mr. Tatum, you are unmuted. Would you like your video turned on? Oh, I can barely hear you. There you go.
I said it may shock your viewers, but you're welcome to turn it on. If
That's okay. I mean, I'm on here, so they take that for what it's worth. Please go right ahead.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And I'd love to be on the developer's side. I think hanging out at the Gold Room's been important. My name's Paul Tatum. I'm at 102 East McGee. We've been around here about 20 years. I have a quick question about the process. And that, the first thing is I found the reply to the first gentleman's comments somewhat disrespectfully labeled a conspiracy theory. And I think it just slightly dismisses the process. I appreciate the process is actually going well, and I think some of us do struggle with the format. But I thought you were subsequently respectful after that, but I found it just a little disappointing. I just wanted to call that out. It slightly diminishes you hearing the rest of my comments. The second major was I'm still not completely concerned, or I don't feel like I've completely understood all the traffic mitigation, but I actually trust the gentleman from Oro Valley, and I look forward to hearing more. A specific question on that and a little backstory is I was just rear-ended when I was at complete stop by somebody going 40 miles an hour. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I have spent a lot of time stopped on Ina Road. And I'm wondering about specifically a little bit more in Plan A. I understand there's an extra egress for the luxury house people to get their own specific egress. And I want to make sure I understand the mitigation around that. Then my second question is, boy, there are some lovely amenities that y'all are adding on there. And I sure love coming to your resort. I wonder if you could speak about access to the neighbors to some of the developments you're doing up in the north, for those of us who are outside the property a little further north. And will we have access to some of these fine things you're looking to be adding? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. Yeah, I will turn it over to Ms. Morales, and then, I don't know, maybe Mr. Stegen would like to add something. Oh, I have you on mute.
If I understand the question right, I think they're talking about amenities of the resort. So I'm actually going to kick that over to Andrew.
Okay.
Is that right, Mr. Tatum? He's muted, so.
My question for you would be with regard to, if I understood correctly, in Plan A, there was a separate egress for the luxury condo development, and I'm not quite sure I understand where that goes out. And is that going to need additional mitigation?
Okay, sorry, I didn't understand your question before. I apologize. So this particular one with the gated entrance, the main entrance would come in off Westward Look, and then we'd have an exit only with a gate. That's what we're depicting here. So it would be exit only, and I believe with the median in there would probably be a right out on that one as well. I have one of my planners here helping me. Yeah, exit. Yeah, so exit only on that one onto Ina Road.
And then Ms. Morales, how about the one across on the northwest corner?
On the northwest corner. Oh, that goes on to Westward Look.
Yeah, I think his question was just in regard to impacts on Ina Road in general.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that one would be definitely, it would either be an exit only, the one coming from the west side, out of the boutique community or sorry, development. It would be either exit only, or that one would have to be restricted to right in, so westbound where it could come in right. We haven't made that final determination on this yet, and again, we'd be working with Oro Valley engineering staff to make sure that whatever we did had the right. That's again where I was talking about the need for decel lanes, where you know, to avoid exactly what you talked about, the potential of getting rear-ended, where people can pull over and slow down as they're going into a development. So those are the things that we're still working on, working with our engineers to make sure we're creating that safety.
And Ms. Morales, before we kick it over to Mr. Stegan, I see Mr. Kiesler on here again, so I'm going to unmute him.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So we don't know the answers to your questions, Mr. Tatum, yet.
Yeah.
That's going to have to be in-depth analysis. We'll study the heck out of that area just to make sure that whatever impacts happen, restore traffic back to its pre-development condition. And that'll be forthcoming. I believe the applicant's working on a traffic study right now. So we'll know more. We'll know more hopefully for the second neighborhood meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kiesler. Mr. Stegan, did you want to talk about amenities at the resort and access?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Tatum, for your questions. And you know, we're open to the public now. Obviously, it's private property, but we're open to the public, and so all the amenities that we have now are open to anybody, and especially the neighbors. Whether it's, you know, we have memberships at the tennis and the fitness and the pool and our restaurants. Although you can understand our restaurants aren't operating normally at this point, but they will be at one point. Anything that we develop, obviously, is you know, I should go back a little bit. That I've this isn't the first time I've worked on a zoning for a resort, and it's always best to whatever you develop, you have to have the approval, at least the your neighbors, you know, using those facilities, whether it's the restaurants or the retail or whatever you, or the commercial, whatever you build there. And so, yes, I go back to the point is that, you know, our intention is not to devalue the resort, and it's to increase the value of the resort. And I'm hoping if we're hoping if it increases the value of the resort, it means that the neighborhood is doing well as well, and including neighbors frequenting whatever we're offering as amenities. So yes, absolutely. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stegan. So next we have Ann Fisher-Siegel, and on deck we have Mike Myers. So Ms. Siegel, I'm unmuting you. Make sure you're not muted on your end. Would you like your video turned on?
That'll be fine, thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
Go right ahead. Should be able to do it now.
Let me start my video. There you go. Well, I'm not coming through. There we go. Thank you. My name is Ann Siegel. I'm addressing my comments to the other 86 participants in addition to this group of community administrators. I represent a small, I myself and another number of people, we represent an effort to incorporate, that was seeking to incorporate the town of Catalina Foothills. That area would have gone, including Westward Look, going south and south down to River Road and east to Sabino Canyon. I do take umbrage with you, Mr. Stegan, that this has not suddenly come up because it's odd to me, and if you call me a conspiracist, I don't think I am. I think I'm a person of government and community that finds it odd about the time we started making the questions about incorporating and seeking the incorporation that this process began. I also understand the families that had previously managed Westward Look had been resistant to this type of development. I take umbrage actually also with the implication that you're doing this in some type of altruistic, kind, or benevolent reason. The reason Oro Valley is seeking to annex this area is because it can make zoning changes that the county won't allow. So putting the annexation in come in conjunction and in connection with incorporation, in connection with annexation, defeats the zoning restrictions that are in there for the county and that are in there to protect this community, and creates very clearly, very simply, very plainly, a sales tax revenue resource for the town of Oro Valley. That's the reason why they're doing it. They'll get permit money for building new properties and new houses, and they'll get sales tax revenue for the commercial development. There is nothing altruistic, there's nothing kind, there's nothing good for specifically for this community. It's good for Oro Valley government coffers and for for Oro Valley taxes. And to give it any other meaning or any other purpose is really ignoring the circumstances that happened when Campbell Corridor, when the city of Tucson attempted to defeat the zoning restrictions that the county had put in place in order to put in dense property development in order to increase the sales tax revenue for the city. This is the same thing happening again. It's nothing that's being done. Right now, there are only 9 areas left in Catalina Foothills that have open land. Very little, 9 areas. We have no parks in this area that's north of river. We have no community land. We have no open land. And this area represents one of the few areas that still allows some untouched, untroubled areas. So my question and challenge to you is, if the community of Catalina Foothills should go forward, and should we try to become incorporated, then will the city of Oro Valley, the town of Oro Valley, contest it in order to instead increase their tax revenues, their hotel taxes, their income, in order to get more money in order to operate? And that, will you admit and agree, yes, this really is not an altruistic or good neighbor activity. It's really just an effort to increase sales tax. And once, perhaps, I don't know, second question, once this land is acquired and developed, then will the next prize be La Encantada, which again has other opportunities for sales tax revenue for the town of Oro Valley. This area is unincorporated. This area is part of the county. This area is under county management and county zoning. And can you, third question, agree and assure us that you're not seeking annexation in order to defeat the zoning restrictions that apply and exist in this area, but in fact are doing it because it's really going to be much better for us to give up open land, give up the opportunity of quiet development, of open development, of maybe hiking trails in this unnamed wash and access to the community, than it is simply to plow it down and call it a neighborhood. Call it no longer call it a neighborhood, call it just part of your revenue sources and stream. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Siegel. I'm gonna have Mr. Bayer-Vella, the Planning and Zoning Administrator, answer a couple of your questions first, and then maybe Mr. Stegan can answer after that. Mr. Vella, you should be good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Spaeth. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I appreciate it very much. I think that was at least a 3-part question, and I'd like to address zoning restrictions, annexation, and the revenue side of it, to the best of my abilities. So the zoning restrictions in the Pima County, frankly, are broken. The current zoning restrictions in no way reflect what's on the property today. So to say there is misalignment between the county zoning and the property today is a very true statement. Right now, the zoning only allows 1-acre lots, and there's a resort that's been there since the early 1900s. So there's clearly a mismatch. And it is certainly rational for Westward Look to want to rectify that. And frankly, they have an option to do that either through Pima County or through Oro Valley. It's entirely their choice. So, we would seek, as part of an annexation as well, to make sure that the annexation addresses, in part, the zoning to make sure it's right sized. Right now, the Pima County zoning is broken. It does not reflect what's on the site today. Secondly, I wanted to talk a little bit about annexation and some of the town's goals. Without a question, there's a revenue benefit for Oro Valley to annex a resort. No one is hiding that. The town would receive a bed tax. That certainly has benefits, without a question. But it also comports with what our residents have expressed by their vote in the general plan to support resort-style development. Resort-style development has been a continuous theme in Oro Valley since its very inception. So again, there's no one is trying to hide behind the revenue side of the picture. That's real, and it's legitimate. But at the same time, the town wants to make sure that it's a reasonable ask, and it's a partnership. The town will not proceed with annexation without the clear acceptance by the property owner. So the question of whether or not the town would contest someone else trying to annex this property, I think that's a false choice. Because again, it's the property owner's decision, not the town's, in terms of whether or not the annexation goes forward. So I hope that answers those two questions, and certainly open to more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vella. Mr. Steegen, I believe there were a couple of questions in there for you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bayer. I think you answered a few of them, but Ms. Siegel, I just wanted to reiterate, nobody's hiding the fact that it has to be good for both sides. So yes, our tax revenue and our bed tax revenue will be a gain for Oro Valley. And on our side, the ability to develop the property that will only enhance what we already have is a gain for us. And obviously, again, as Linda mentioned, we absolutely have no plans to do anything at this point. I can guarantee you we haven't even made a phone call to any developer or anybody other than the planning center, which is helping us through this zoning process. So we'd like to set the table for that, just in case at one point in the future, a few years down the road, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, that we decide to do that. But at this point, we have no plans to do that. And but if we do, yes, it has to be. It's good for both sides. And so what we'll gain from that is the ability to develop, the rest of the resort private property. But I'd like to remind everybody, our core business here is the resort and is hospitality. And so, as I mentioned in my opening statements, that it is our intention to whatever we do, it has to fit within our core business values, which in our core operation, which is running a hotel or running a resort. So again, and this was the project of incorporating other areas, I'm just saying you're thinking too far into that. We haven't been. This process started a couple of years ago, and we're only concerned about our own property at this point. And during this process, we want to make it amicable for the neighbors as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Steegen. And we are fast approaching 7:30. So considering we still have a number of hands up for folks who haven't had a chance to speak, I hope everybody is comfortable with us continuing on to try and get to as many of those as we can. If you've got more than one question, that's perfectly fine. That's great. Just as a heads up, I am going to jump over you to get to somebody who hasn't asked a question yet, just out of fairness to everybody. So with that in mind, Mike Myers is up next, and then, I'm going to butcher this, Gene Glatke. Hopefully that was close. So Mr. Myers, I have unmuted you. Would you like your video on as well?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. All right, so and then you should be able to do that now. Please feel free to go ahead.
Okay, the start my video. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Spieth and Ms. Morales and Andrew from Westward Look and the elected officials in Oro Valley. My name's Mike Myers. I live at 3 East Old Ina Road. If you pull up one of the proposed plan documents that Ms. Morales was showing us on the screen, the title of the section on the west of Westward Look Drive on the map, that's over my bedroom. In fact, I think I'm under the letter E right now. So I wanted to just outline some concerns that I'm hoping you guys can consider, and then I have one question. So my concerns, you reference a few potential plans that include residences that would look into homes and neighborhoods, and some of your plans have a few hotel options. Ms. Morales, a few minutes ago, you referenced a 50-foot zoning that you would be seeking, and there's no doubt in my mind that not only would that block any views that we may have, but it would absolutely impact our privacy. There's no way around it, especially considering where my home resides. You also highlight the need for overflow conference capacity as a key rationale for parts of these plans. Conference attendees, appropriately, are commonly known for their desire to let off steam, enjoy themselves, and generally have a good time that frequently goes later into the evening. Completely understandable. These types of proposed usages, the apartments and hotels looking down into our homes and neighborhoods, and conference overflow hotels that will lead to the unpredictable actions of conference attendees, whether we want to admit them or not, they're going to happen. This is going to dramatically change the flavor of our area. As a result, in my view and in the view of others, it's also going to dramatically impact the value of the homes that were partially valued due to their lack of proximity to these types of venues. In addition, beyond property value, which we can argue that away, I personally believe that and will have safety concerns for the residents as a result of guests coming in and out of the area, seeing neighborhoods that may be interesting to them, and whether it's someone drinking too much at a restaurant or someone that is a conference attendee just wandering into one of our homes or backyards, that's a legitimate concern of mine. So those are my concerns. My question is, are you aware of and how do you plan to address the threatened and endangered wildlife that have lived and do live in the areas that you plan to develop? There is more to this than, there's more to the livelihood of these threatened and endangered species than keeping the unknown wash intact. We have bighorn sheep. I know we have some species of deer that are endangered. And as Mr. Menor mentioned a little while ago, yes, we have javelinas, rattlesnakes, bobcats, Gila monsters, and everything else. So my question is, what do you plan to do about the wildlife? I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my concern and ask my question. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Ms. Morales.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, absolutely. And anytime you're disturbing some previously undisturbed desert, there is habitat there. That is part of the reason why the town has their resource inventory that they have us go through to make sure that we're providing wildlife corridors. But I'd also like to remind you that 11 acres, I believe, to the north is going to be completely preserved for natural open space and desert. So that is a big portion of the site that's going to remain as habitat. That wash, yes, it does run through there, and yes, there is some vegetation and wildlife that comes through there, but it's been really disturbed over the years too, from various human activities, as is especially the eastern portion of the site with the corrals and everything that's going on. So it's not really native vegetation, native desert, undisturbed desert. Yes, you know, I personally live next to the Williams Center, and even with that intensity of development, we still have wildlife that coexists with the neighborhood. I believe that you'll still have that running through there. It may not be exactly the same, but I think that what we're proposing is a balance of development. We're on Ina Road. It's a very, very busy roadway. So it's really an area that makes a lot of sense to develop rather than leave it as, you know, open space permanently. And I think it's always been in the plans of all the different property owners that something would happen on there. I understand your concerns, and you know, and we appreciate you reaching out to us and working out some of the issues with the property boundary. And absolutely, I think you can see on all the alternatives. So we've really tried to put some of the lesser intense uses as we're getting closer to the neighborhood. We try to push the buildings up toward the front where the height is so that there's distances between there. And again, setbacks and transitions and buffers and all those things are really important as we're transitioning to every neighbor. And so it's something we're looking at in the PAD document. Don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
Linda, there were just some questions about building height and privacy too. Can you maybe touch on those?
Well, that's kind of where I was going with that, with the transitions and trying to push, particularly on the west, the option that you have is that has the most potential for height on the west side against Mr. Meyer's property, or on the side that he lives on. That's really the courtyard office retail, the concept, I believe, illustrative Plan B, and that does push those buildings toward the north and puts, again, parking behind there, but again, those uses tend to be daytime uses as well. The human activity, sure, there's going to be people there. Walls can do a lot, fences can do a lot if there's a desire to fence off some of those areas so that we can prevent people from wandering back into the residential area. Those are absolutely things we can talk about and put into the PAD as far as protecting that. I'm looking back and forth at my plan to jog my memory of that. We are showing landscape borders. So again, if we plant those with native vegetation, especially species that are more pokey and less attractive for people to try to walk through, densely planted areas and transitions are very helpful to prevent those people from wandering in there. But I think as far as transitions of building heights and pushing them away from the neighborhood and requiring those setbacks are going to help with the privacy.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like Mr. Steegen has his literal hand up, so I'll turn you on, sir, so you might have something to add.
Thank you. I just wanted Michael or somebody from the town to respond to Mike's comment about the property lines. And Mike saying that it's going through his house.
Yeah, I can certainly fall on the sword for that one. Sorry about that, Mr. Myers. That was my graphic I had put together. I thought I was following the property line, and it was just at a scale that wasn't quite as precise as I would have hoped. So we're not taking your bedroom, I promise. We're not looking at annexing, right? So there you go. Thank you. Okay,
thank you.
Looks like next up is Jean Glatke. Apologize if I messed that up, and Dino Sekeller is on deck. So you are unmuted. Should be. Make sure you're not muted on your end.
Mute.
Okay, and did you want your video on?
Sure, that's okay. Thank you.
Sure, yep, absolutely. Should be able to do that now.
Okay, great. I know the time is short, and most of my issues have been addressed. The open spaces, the fauna, flora, the washes, real concern about that. We've lived in the Westward Look area for 30 years. And to us, what has been special about Westward Look has been the spaces, the desert. And once it's destroyed, it's gone. So that is a very serious concern of ours. And you've talked to it, but you really don't understand it because you don't live there. The buildings, the washes, no one's mentioned the 100-year restriction, but that applies to the property that's where you're going to be developing. So I think it comes down to the traffic. We live there, and you don't live there. And I can't tell you, there are deaths at our intersection of Vine and Oracle. Often during rush hour, the traffic is backed up from Oracle to Westward Drive. It's a dangerous, treacherous intersection, and it's really hard to imagine, no matter how many studies you do, how you're going to make that area safer, not just for us neighbors, but for your guests, for the traffic that goes by. It's a real concern for us. So, trying to put in a question, because I know the time is short, why hasn't Westward Look approached the county about these issues? Why where you're going to be developing. And I cannot tell you, there's a
All
call
right,
to
I
Westward
think
Look Drive.
they're fading out a little bit. I did get the last question there at least. Why hasn't
Yes, that's my
Westward
question.
Look approached Pima
Is it
County?
dangerous,
So,
treacherous,
Mr.
bad,
Stegan,
or safer? Not just for, so, trying to put in.
sorry, Ms. Glacky, your internet connection is breaking up a little bit. Are you
That
still
was
there?
just my question. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
Would you
thank
mind repeating the last part? I did get your question about why they haven't approached Pima County. Was there another question beyond that?
No.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Stegan, please, you are unmuted.
Thanks for your question, Bob. First off, Oro Valley approached us first, and I've had some conversations with Pima County about Oro Valley approaching us, and Pima County has never indicated that they would either like to counteroffer or that they're interested in helping us out in that respect. Having said that, I've got a great relationship with Pima County, and so it's just that for whatever reason they, and again, they've known about this for a few years, and I've even spoke to Chuck Huckleberry a few weeks ago, and some of the staff, and they're aware of it, and so it's not so much that we haven't approached them, is that they've known that this is going on, and they haven't approached us, I guess, and so. So we've moved ahead with Oro Valley. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So up next is Dino Stekeller, and on deck is Renee Garofaro. Apologize if I messed that up. So, Mr. Stekeller, you should be on. Would you like your video on, Dino?
Sure.
All right, go right ahead.
All right, thanks. Hi, Linda. Hi, Michael. All the rest of you guys. Good to see you. And hi to all my neighbors. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. And I hope at some point through this process that we can all meet together and get to know each other a little better. I live on Westward Look Drive. I'm one of 3 houses that actually face onto Westward Look Drive. And I don't know if you can see this map, but on that little yellow square there, so I kind of protrude into both sides of the proposed area that we're talking about developing. My dad actually bought this property from Harold Mason, who was the owner of Westward Look 60 years ago.
Dino, you're a little quiet. If you could speak up a little bit, that'd be helpful, please.
Okay, is this better?
A little bit, yep.
All right, well, I have on my laptop here, the mic doesn't do so good, so I'll do my best to talk loud. So my dad bought this property from Harold Mason, who was the owner of Westward Look 60 years ago, and built a family house. It's been in the family all this time. I bought it from my parents' trust in 1993, and have lived here ever since, except for maybe a couple of years when I actually moved to Oro Valley, and then have since moved back here and been here all this time. And I have to say that Westward Look is always been a great neighbor. Everything from their security to their landscapers, just to how the hospitality that they've shown us, it's been great. So I think that we as neighbors are very lucky to have a quality resort. And I also think that every one of us, when we bought our homes, Westward Look was here. This vacant land was here. And Westward Look supported us as we built our homes and as we moved in. And I think that this is a time I'm actually excited about the idea of, rather than just having some vacant land, some of these areas, there are people that have been on this land sometimes doing things that aren't necessarily the good things. So I'm looking forward to it. I also believe that we live in a world where we need to start thinking about infill and density. and that this is the right thing to do. I also think that Oro Valley is the right town, the right person, the right community to help us build. Because for those of you who know Oro Valley and have worked with them, it's tough. It's tough to get a project through because of the quality and the amount of the community input that they have and the design guidelines. And it's you know, if we were doing this in Pima County, you know, we wouldn't have such caring, good people. So I'm just speaking in support of this, and I'm appealing to my neighbors to really to look at this as a good opportunity, because Oro Valley and Westward Look will listen, and they'll watch out for us. And if you look at what's the development that's taken place up the street, even at the Pima Canyon and Ina, those offices, and also there's a cathedral up there, and these are quality projects, and that's the type of projects that are being put into this area. And you know, makes no sense that this is going to be a time when it's just going to be a low down development. This is going to be quality, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't specifically have a question, and I would like to talk, you know, about Mike and Jean and talking about wildlife. And I tell you, our neighbors who have that VRBO have some pretty wildlife going on up there. And, you know, to me, those neighbors are by far, you know, they're the ones that are more of the problem than Westward Look. And I look at Westward Look to be a solution. And as they develop and they provide more security, and the Oro Valley provides more security, that this is just going to be, it's going to be better for all of us. So that's my appeal to you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up is Renee Giafero. Again, I apologize if I butchered that. And Anne Marie's iPad is on deck. So Anne Marie, get ready. So Renee, you're unmuted. Would you like your video on?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, you should be able to do that now if you like.
Hi, my name's Renee Giafero. I live actually on the other side. I live on Westward Look Heights, which is on the east side of this development. And I purchased my house 2 years ago, roughly. And I purchased this house because it's in a very quiet neighborhood. And I can't stress that enough. It is a very, very quiet neighborhood. This resort expansion, no matter how you go about it, it will impact this very quiet neighborhood. As it does stand though, I am concerned about traffic. Traffic already comes into the neighborhood when they're looking for the resort. They do a quick flip around right in front, or they'll go further in and then they'll flip around. It's quite clear that they're looking for the resort. So I am concerned about that. The general population of the area is, I think, very significant. In your plans, you vary from 140 to 184, to 250 apartments. That's a huge impact to the neighborhood. This neighborhood itself doesn't even have anywhere close to that number of houses, let alone apartments. The natural resources that will be impacting. And while the intention might not be to lower property values, I have a hard time believing that a 4-story, although it does vary, 3 to 4 story apartment building looking into my backyard or my front yard wouldn't impact my property value. I cannot follow that train of thought. The expansion to me just doesn't fit into the neighborhood. I have 2 very young children. Again, I bought this house because it was safe. It was a quiet neighborhood, and safety is a huge concern of mine. Specifically, at a comment that Mr. Vela brought up, he said the voters of Oro Valley voted to increase resort-style development. I just want to point out that Westward Look and the neighbors are not in Oro Valley. We did not vote on that. That is not our opinions, and that is Oro Valley's opinions. That's something that we didn't have the chance to vote on because we aren't on it. So I feel like you aren't accurately representing our communities as opposed to reflecting Oro Valley's values upon us. That's all I had. I'm very concerned about this development, and I found the community plan disappointing. That is my area of expertise. The fact that the mailers were mailed out by Oro Valley was very nice. Prior to that, the Westward Look themselves did mail out things, but they only mailed out to the houses that were adjacent to the property. I counted that at about 12 or 15. I live across the street from that. I am in clear eyesight. I am in 100 feet, or about 150 feet, I believe is what it is, something in there from that, and I did not find that mailer. So I found that public relation method extremely lacking. And that's it. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening, and I appreciate all your feedback.
Okay. Thank you very much, Renee. Ms. Morales, if you would like to answer a couple of those, and I know Mr. Stegan does as well. Please go ahead.
Yes. Real quick on the notice thing. We actually, normally the process does not, it's all driven by the town, by Oro Valley, but we actually had decided that we wanted to do something extra. And I'm sorry that you're disappointed that we didn't get out farther, but with 550 notices that were sent out by the town, we really wanted to do something that was really reaching out to the people that are adjacent and sharing a property boundary with Westward Look. So that's where we cut it off. You know, in hindsight, maybe we could have done it more like the 150 feet. But then the next person over would have probably been upset as well. But that was where we decided that we wanted to have that personal touch, that Andrew really wanted to reach out and make sure the people that share a property boundary with him had that personal touch. That doesn't mean that we don't want to talk to you. It's just that was kind of the extra decision that we decided to do that allowed us to have that personal interaction with them and those phone calls. Absolutely. If you'd like to talk to any of us one-on-one, we're here. We'd like to do that. Yeah, as far as the traffic things, I know when I've gone to Westward Look, it's hard to see. As you're coming down the hill, traffic is coming along fast and you're trying to find it. One of the things that this proposal includes is to really improve that entry and to make it so it's apparent that this is where you go into Westward Look. There's the light there, but really trying to make it obvious that this is where you go into Westward Look, so people aren't turning in. And I'm assuming what you're saying is they're turning on to, it must be Sonia Way. We could do signage. There's possibilities of maybe even doing signage like no Westward Look access at Sonia, and then having it so it's clearly marked with tasteful signage and tasteful monumentation so that people know this is where we turn, so they're not trying to wander into that. As you've seen, we have no proposal for any kind of access directly into the neighborhoods. We're keeping it all onto Ina and a Westward Look closer to Ina so that people aren't going in and trying to pull into your neighborhoods. So I understand those concerns and we share that concern as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Morales. And just before I turn it over to Mr. Stegan, I did want to just clarify, it sounded like there was maybe a question about what the town did in terms of notice too. So Ms. Morales was explaining what Mr. Stegan and the Planning Center chose to do in terms of their particular notice. For the town, we went well beyond adjacent property owners. We sent over 550 notices to folks all the way up to McGee to the north and the entire Westward Look Heights subdivision and folks across Ina Road as well. So we definitely wanted to make sure everybody, including entire subdivisions, were notified. So just to make that clear. So Mr. Stegan, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just, Renee, just, I apologize. That was our call with Linda that obviously, the letters that went to the neighbors that directly were adjacent to our property, which was in the 50s, I think 53 was the number of letters that we sent out. I want it to be personalized with my direct line because over the years, those are the neighbors that I personally have had most interaction with. And so that was a decision. It was not meant to deceive anybody. And we made that decision knowing that a few days later that the town would be sending their letters out to a larger larger audience. Having said that, you did call me, and the day after your neighbor received the letter, and I think we had a good conversation. So I'm not shutting out. I'm not pretending to shut out, any neighbor. It was just I was trying to be a little bit more personal with those ones that history tells us we've had the most communication with. So I apologize for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stegan. All right, next up is Anne Marie's iPad, and on deck is Liz McCaleb. So Anne Marie, you are unmuted. Would you like your video turned on? Please make sure you're unmuted on your end as well. There you go. Would you like your video turned on? Anne Marie, we can't hear you for some reason. I can see you. I can't hear you though. No, unfortunately we can't hear you. I'm not sure if maybe the microphone on your device there isn't working, or maybe it's not turned on. All right, well, in the interest of time, we'll come back to you. Sorry about that. Apologies. Liz McCaleb is up next, and then Lisa Ann Trudinger Smith is on deck. So Liz, you should be unmuted. Would you like your video on?
No, I'm just have a pretty short comment that I would like to make.
Sure.
I agree with most of the from area residents. I'm to the west of the resort right there. I'd like to know why Westward Look thinks that they're going to be any more successful with office space developments, restaurant developments, shopping center developments than any of the other developments that have happened in that area. And I'm going back before COVID. We have not really recovered from 2008. You go around the neighborhood and you will see from 25 to 50% vacancy in those restaurant developments, shopping developments, office space developments, apartment developments. And so to ruin the desert with those odds, I just want to know what your thinking is and why you would do that knowing that you're probably going to fail in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Mr. Stegan, I saw your hand up. If you'd like to, you should be unmuted.
I'm sorry, I'm doing it the old way, just raising my hand.
That's okay.
Liz, thanks for your comments. And we wouldn't do anything if we thought there was a high probability of failing. And to go back to the original comments is that we have absolutely nothing planned at this point. And because we realize this is, even pre-COVID, to be honest, is not the time to start any huge developments with high probability of failing. This rezoning and the opportunity for us to develop, if it's successful to get annexed to Oro Valley, it has a several-year process or a several-year opportunity, so that at one point, whether it be 3, 5, 10, 15 years from now, if the time is right and the conditions are right, then at that point we'll make the decision to develop. So there is we are not developing right now, so I hope that and I'm sorry, I should just say again that we're not going to do anything that we feel we have a high probability of failing. And yes, if we were to develop anything now, we'd had a very high probability of failing. So at this point, it's probably going to be a few years and hopefully sooner, but time will tell before we even start thinking about anything.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stegan. Anne Marie's iPad, I'm going to try and give you another go. If you can, I've unmuted you. If you can unmute on your end, see if we can hear you. Nope, I can't seem to hear you. Sorry, sir. So please, by all means, if you have a question or comment, forward it to ask@orovalleyaz.gov, and we will be happy to get back with you. Apologies for that. let's see. So up next is Lisa Ann Trudinger Smith, and on deck is Tucson. Please be prepared. So Lisa Ann, I've unmuted you. Would you like your video on?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, yep, you should be able to do that now. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just have a couple of quick technical questions. The first thing is that the general plan amendment, when I take a look at it, I understand it to only affect that parcel that is to the west of Westward Look Drive, and it's changing it from low density residential to neighborhood commercial office, which according to the code is a type 1 plan amendment, but so I'm wondering why it's being classified as a type 2 plan amendment. And then my second question is, I just want to confirm that the concept plans are just that, they're concept plans, and that they're not binding the resort at all. So whatever's written into the PAD is what would be the restrictions, but you know, they could do something different than what's in the concept plan, so long as it complies with whatever ends up being written into the PAD. And actually, sorry, the third quick question is that once the amendment and the rezoning are done, when they do actually go to develop those parcels, that there's no further opportunity for, I mean, as long as it's compliant with the zoning, then there's no further opportunity for neighbor involvement in that process. Those are my 3 questions. Thanks.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for those. And actually, yeah, I can answer those as the town principal planner. So for your first question, why isn't it considered a type 1 general plan amendment as opposed to a type 2? So there's 2 triggers, if you will, that have to be met to qualify as a type 1 general plan amendment. So the first is size. It has to be larger than 40 acres in size, and it has to be listed as a type 1. We have a little chart in our general plan that lists when you're going from one land use to another, what type of amendment it is. So it has to be listed as a type 1 amendment in that chart and be larger than 40 acres in size. And this general plan amendment is not over that 40 acre threshold. So that's why it's a type 2. The concept plans, so those, this should move forward and get approved, those do get approved as conditions, essentially, of approval for the PAD. And so any subsequent development down the road, you know, as Mr. Stegan indicated, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, 15 years down the road, whatever proposal comes in has to be in substantial conformance with those concept plans. Now, there's a little bit of flexibility in what substantial conformance means, but what you see on those concept plans is essentially what you're going to get. And if somebody wants to come in and do something different than that, then they have to come back through the process and have that reconsidered. And there would be a public opportunity at that point. So, and then your third question is, depending on how soon development would take, the way the town code is set up is if you have a rezoning like this, if the concept plan is reviewed and approved by our planning commission and town council, if somebody comes in and develops within 5 years of that approval, you would not have to go back before town council for consideration of that site plan. Again, assuming it's in substantial conformance with the concept plan. But if it's beyond 5 years, which it certainly sounds like in this scenario that could be the case, then a conceptual site plan would have to go back through commission and council at that point. And those aren't public hearings, but they are public meetings where you do have an opportunity as a neighbor to make your voice heard. And then regardless of what happens in terms of a site plan, as a non-residential architecture, so regardless of whether it's apartments or offices or retail or a hotel, the town requires that architectural review go through our planning commission and town council. And so those are additional opportunities that folks would be able to participate in that public meeting. So I hope that answers your 3 questions. Okay, thank you. All right, so up next is Tucson. Hopefully you know that that's what your sign-in name is. I've got you unmuted, and then Bern Velasco is on deck. So Tucson, would you like your video on as well?
No, that's fine. I was
Okay.
just gonna say a couple of things,
Sure, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I was born in Tucson and, lived here my whole life and on the north side. And so I really value, the open desert, less development, and the natural feel and culture of our area. I remember when going to high school, driving up Oracle, Oro Valley started like past McGee, and then it crept up into like where the old Fry's used to be. Now it's Walmart neighborhood market, and like where we'd go to EG's, and then like it crept up into where Sprouts is at Suffolk, and now it's like taking I don't know what kind of turn it is, but it's like just grasping one particular area past south of Suffolk, and then like what happens next? Can it like just take a jump and go into La Encantada? So I valued some of the comments that Mrs. Fisher Siegel made. There are concerns about, the values of Oro Valley don't always match up with the values of maybe people from the foothills or people, on the other areas where they've actually are concerned about just general open space. And even if you're driving, just the feel of the desert. And we've gone for walks and some of the horse trails at Westward Look. What happens to those versus a 200 to 300 person apartment complex? And then, boutique shops are one thing, but like, it like never ends. And then what's next? Like we turn into Scottsdale and then we do east-west freeway. I mean, this is not like, nothing against what the property managers themselves need to do to increase their wealth or whatever. But, at some point you wonder what we can do as individuals to stop some of what we see going on. And it doesn't look like we can do much on a practical level. If Catalina Foothills did create a township and then, you annex the areas around Westward Look, maybe you could potentially capture that and prevent rezoning. But aside from that, it seems like if one property owner wants to be annexed by a jurisdiction, there's nothing to stop it from happening necessarily. Like, I don't know what we can do other than work with the property developer and hope for the best. And so, I said a few different things about the overall vision, but my specific question might be for some of the government officials who are here is what could be done if you actually did not want this to happen on behalf? What could the citizens do? Is there anything that they can do? And, prevent annexation from occurring, or if it gets annexed, prevent development. What can we do to stop it?
Okay. Thank you for your question. Bern Velasco is up next, and we're getting close to the 8 o'clock hour, so it looks like, sir, you will be our last speaker of the evening. I've unmuted you, and it looks like your video is on. Please go ahead.
Good evening. So we own property that abuts the Westward Look, and we've enjoyed having the Westward Look as neighbors. We enjoy great views and relatively quiet lifestyle. Just have standard concerns about views being disrupted, that effect on property value, looking at the different proposals of what development might look like. Not excited to see 3- and 4-story buildings. Not excited about having the view of a desert or a corral replaced with the view of a parking lot. Also generally concerned about traffic. It can be difficult to turn out of what's already a pretty busy intersection. And so I just want to be able to remain involved in giving feedback and in seeing how any possible development when actual plans are in the works goes. And so I just look forward to the Westward Look continuing to be a good neighbor, I hope, in that respect, but also, taking real concern for what my fellow neighbors have expressed. I also do want to highlight the wildlife issue is something that is very important to Westward Look Heights. Many of us have cameras, and we share the footage of the animals that we see. I know that I, for one, I'm always excited to see a bobcat walk across the back porch, and feel like I'm probably going to lose a lot of that sort of wildlife as we will probably have to build a wall and things related to having more development behind us. So not excited, but hopeful that the Westward Look will take into consideration the concerns of the neighbors behind it.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. And Tucson, sorry I didn't catch your name there. I did realize that somebody wanted to answer your last question there. So Mr. Vela, if you are unmuted and your video should be ready to go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spaeth. I just wanted to encourage everyone to participate. The bottom line is, and I've heard a couple of times this evening that concern that Oro Valley values and Catalina values may or may not align. I do want to make it really clear that's what these meetings are about. Oro Valley has perhaps the most extensive neighborhood meeting and outreach process in the region. So we have demonstrated time and time again that we do take into account what the neighbors have to say. And I want to remind everyone, an application hasn't even been submitted. So that should lend itself toward the level of concern that we are approaching the neighbors before an application has even been submitted. So that outreach is genuine. So please stay involved. We've taken extensive notes this evening, and we will be having further discussions with the property owner. And there will be a second neighborhood meeting where we'll have more information and do our best to try to further address the concerns you raised this evening. So thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Spaeth.
Absolutely. Hopefully we answered Tucson's question. So with that in mind, we're past the 8 o'clock hour, so I appreciate everybody's patience and willingness to stay on with us. So thank you, Mr. Steed and Ms. Morales. I'd like to echo what Mr. Vela said. I want to reiterate how to make your voice heard. Again, this is just the first step. There will be multiple opportunities to participate throughout this process. The next neighborhood meeting will be held on October 22nd and will similarly be a web-based, fully interactive Zoom meeting. We will continue to notify property owners who received a yellow postcard for this meeting and post the property with yellow signs for upcoming events. If you wish to receive a postcard and did not, please reach out via ask@orovalleyaz.gov and provide your name and address, and we will ensure that you are notified next time. Again, I would like to reiterate it is important to hear your comments and questions. Community participation is what makes Oro Valley a special place. Community input has shaped every general plan amendment and rezoning application in Oro Valley, just as it will on this project. A summary of the comments we received tonight will also be generated and be put on ovprojects.com and will be forwarded to decision makers as part of the formal submittal. Additional information will be posted on ovprojects.com and will be continually updated as the town receives that formal application. Please use that website and ask@orovalleyaz.gov throughout this process to stay informed. Thank you for joining us this evening, and tune in for the next neighborhood meeting on October 22nd. Hope you all have a great evening.